Hey there everybody, Sage Popham here, founder of the School of Evolutionary Herbalism, and thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video here where I'm going to be discussing a little bit about detoxification. You know, this is a term that gets used a lot in alternative medicine circles, and it's was a really big, kind of felt like a big fad there for a while where like everyone was cleansing and detoxing and just trying to purge everything out, maybe not everything, but a lot of things that shouldn't be in the body out of the body, and turning to herbal medicines in order to assist in that process. And while I think that's great that folks are, you know, considering their health and wanting to, you know, make sure that their bodies are pure and clean and functioning properly, we do run into some issues when herbal medicines are looked at and turned to for detoxification and potentially being used to detoxify certain things out of the body that we don't really know if those herbs will cleanse that out of their body. And adding on to that, when we look at the concept of detoxification or purifying the blood and the tissues of the body, when we're looking at that from the traditional perspectives, it's very different from the way people are looking at it here in the modern world. And it can potentially lead to misuse of what we in Western herbalism refer to as the alterative category of medicinal plants. And so there's a appropriate usage of alteratives and definitely inappropriate usage of those plants, which can actually lead to some adverse reactions, can lead to potential constitutional harm. And so I feel like this is an important topic to discuss. A student recently brought a question to me around this, and I thought it would be beneficial to share it with the rest of the community here on YouTube or the podcast or the blog or wherever you're consuming this content. So on that note, be sure to hit the like, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, leave a review. You know, that is one very simple, quick, and easy way that you can help to support the channel here and just to be able to reach more people with our message about medicinal plants and holistic herbal medicine. So thanks so much for tuning into this video. Hopefully you enjoy what I have to share here about herbalism and detoxification. With that, I'm going to jump right in here and talk about question number 1 coming from Titilayo Fashola in the Vitalist Herbal Practitioner Program. And the question is, the word detoxification has been overused and has caused more harm than good. Can you please do a session on detoxification? What it really is, how our body benefits, does it come naturally or not, how a typical detox program should be, can it be specific, or there is a general form, etc. Yeah, this is a really great question. And I do think this is a topic that is important to talk about because you're correct. We do see the term detoxification thrown around, used a lot. We see a whole subset in the supplement industry of, a whole industry really around detoxification based products that are just available over the counter. And, you know, kind of like a whole, I guess, movement within different, I guess, sects of the alternative medicine world that really puts a lot of emphasis and focus on detoxification, and yes, to a point where it could potentially be detrimental to people's health. So one thing that I think is really important to understand here when we're discussing detoxification and herbal medicine is that traditionally, you know, herbal remedies that were considered detoxifying agents, what in traditional Western herbalism would usually be referred to as alteratives or blood purifiers. These were classically used for a pretty specific constellation of symptoms, a very specific pattern that we might refer to generally as damp heat patterns, right? Where we see people with, you know, fluid congestion, stagnation, in the joints and the tissues. We see skin conditions, inflamed, damp, wet skin conditions like eczema, very oily acne, joint pain, arthritis, headaches, digestive stagnation, sluggishness, heaviness, and liver stagnation. Basically, things that are indicating that this person is their metabolism is such that it's not able to tolerate their basic metabolic waste products. Meaning that, they eat food and their body, their cells, and their organs of elimination can't effectively get the waste products out of their body. And so this is where we see the channels and organs of elimination are blocked, congested, basically ineffectively getting things out of the body, right? And so things accumulate within the body and lead to this constellation of symptoms that I just kind of listed, a handful of standard ones, classically referred to as bad blood syndrome, right? And this is how alternative plants have been used for a very long time. There's a lot of different types of alternatives, right? We've got diuretic alternatives, we've got diaphoretic alternatives, we've got bitter liver-based alternatives, we've got laxative alternatives, we've got respiratory alternatives, right? There's all sorts of different types of alternative, but essentially what an alternative plant does is it helps to open those channels of elimination and enhancing the body's natural innate detoxification processes. So we're talking about detoxification of just the basic waste products of metabolism, right? Just the basic thing, we consume foods, we consume things, right? And the body has to get rid of the waste, right? That's really the way that traditionally alternatives are seen. Now, what we end up seeing, in a lot of, alternative medicine kind of scenes is this term as detoxification being used, and herbal detoxifying plants kind of being taken outside of that traditional context and really being said, these plants will, detox your body of pesticides and herbicides and environmental pollutants and, genetically modified organisms and all sorts of different things that oftentimes, hasn't exactly been studied. And from a scientific perspective, like there isn't oftentimes really clear proof that, this herb taken in this form, in this quantity for this period of time removes said environmental pollutant or something like that. And so what this has kind of turned into is detoxifying herbs kind of being looked at in a really different way and being used to cleanse the body of things like pollutants and toxins that are really outside of the sphere of our basic metabolic waste products, and those herbs being used in sometimes very high amounts for very extended periods of time to attempt to cleanse the body of these toxins and pollutants and things like that, but without the consideration of the constitutional effects of these plants. And I think this is one of the biggest mistakes that is made oftentimes in more of the biomedical model of herbal medicine, or especially kind of a cookie cutter, one for all type formulations we see in the supplement industry, which is this oversight of how those plants will affect someone's constitution. Now, most of these detoxifying alternative category of plants tend to be, for the most part, cooling, drying, draining plants from a humoral perspective. From the Ayurvedic humoral perspective with the doshas, right, they would say that most of these types of plants are very aggravating to the vata dosha, right, to the air and ether elements of the body. They tend to cool you down. They tend to drain, and their whole effect is to drain and cleanse and purge fluids to their removal. It's like a removal therapy, right? So it's removing things from the body. And that is not the ideal thing for the Vata type constitution, which tends to be cold, dry, weak, emaciated, malnourished, variable in their digestion. They oftentimes have a difficult time absorbing things. And alternatives are increasing the elimination of things, right? So it's really the reverse thing that's going on with detoxifying alternative plants and the Vata dosha. And, for those of you that don't know, I was really involved in the raw food world when feel like raw foodism was like a really popular thing, and when the raw diet was like, what now is like keto, like everyone's all keto, and before that it was paleo, and a while before that it was like rah and it's like whatever. There's always some sort of dietary fad that everyone jumps on the bandwagon of, and something else comes and replaces it, and I'm just kind of like, I just feel like this is kind of almost humorous at this point. But anyways, I was really on the raw food bandwagon, and that dietary protocol / fad was really set on detoxifying, right? Detox. And what I saw in the raw food world was pretty much across the board Vata imbalance, right? These were all very thin, weak, emaciated looking humans that were very cold and very dry and constantly detoxifying themselves and getting really unhealthy from it, right? Very, very cold damage to the digestive system, constitutional weakness, lowered energy. Sure, they would feel a lot of energy in the beginning, but over time, that energy, they would become very, very weak and very, very deficient. And I think this is because there was so much focus on cleansing. It's like it has to be followed up by some rejuvenation and rebuilding and nourishing, right? We can't forever be in cleansing, detoxifying mode. So I think my point is that there is like a very big difference between the traditional understanding of a detoxifying alternative medicinal plant, how it is used, what it is used for, versus kind of the modern approach to people really wanting to cleanse and detoxify because they're paranoid about environmental pollutants and toxins and things like that. And I'm not trying to deny the fact that those things exist. Those things do for sure exist. I just think it's a bit of a leap for people to start saying, oh, all alternative plants are detoxifying plants and therefore they will cleanse the body of like heavy metals and environmental pollutants and toxins. And it's like, well, maybe they do, but we don't really know that for sure. But what we do know is that they're most of the time cold, draining, drying, eliminative plants that have certain requirements for their usage, specifically damp heat type patterns, patterns of excess that we see within people where we need eliminative therapies. We need to cleanse and lighten and open up and move these organs and channels of elimination. And if those types of plants are used outside of that context, they can lead to constitutional damage. Maybe damage is a hard word, but constitutional imbalance, especially in terms of coldness in the digestive system, but also dryness in the mucosa, and overall aggravation of that Vata dosha. We can see people getting more nervous, more tense, more anxious, more tendency to tension and constriction and spasm. We can see them more prone to, as I said, coldness and dryness as well. So, I think when it comes to like detoxification, I think it's good to turn to traditions and see, how the process of cleansing and detoxification has been done traditionally and successfully. And I think Ayurveda really does have quite a bit to offer in this regard. Their whole protocol, referred to as panchakarma, is their very refined system of cleansing and detoxification, and I got something in my mouth. There we go. And I think one of the things that to me is the most important factor of panchakarma that pretty much I don't think anyone really looks at if we're, looking at it from more of a biomedical Western perspective, is the timing of it and the constitutional factors of it. It's like, okay, who's detoxing here? Is it a Vata person, a Pitta person, or a Kapha person? What season is it, right? I mean, a Kapha person probably shouldn't be doing a whole bunch of detoxification in the middle of winter, because winter is not the time to detox, right? Springtime is really ideal timing for detox for certain constitutions. And that's one thing that I think Ayurveda does very well, is they don't have one set protocol for everyone. They really fine tune the herbs and the timing and the protocol for that cleansing and detoxification according to the needs of the individual. And I think that's what we're all about as holistic herbalists, right? Is not just having a cookie cutter one and done model for everyone, but having things be customized, having things be tailored to suit the unique and specific needs of each individual person. And so I think that is probably one of the most effective ways to consider and understand and approach detoxification. I think it's very important to follow up detoxification as well with some form of rejuvenation and revitalization. I think that was one of the big mistakes that I saw in the raw food world, was that people were just cleansing all of the time and they never rebuilt themselves, and therefore led to profound levels of weakness and what I saw as emaciation and malnourishment. So these are just some of my thoughts on detoxification. I think it is something that is good for folks to do every now and then. I do think, especially, in our modern world, the way a lot of folks eat, the way people's activity levels are and things like that, detoxification is a good thing to do if it's something that seems to be required by someone, but it certainly isn't for everyone. So I think these are some of the factors that come to mind that are worth considering, and some of my thoughts on the subject of detox. So thanks so much for the question, and I hope that served you well.